Okay, so we have a distinguished panel here. I'm going to do a quick round of introductions, and by the way, the agenda has changed. We decided to move away from Industry 4.0 to digital, and then we decided even that wasn't interesting enough, so we'll start with some of their personal journeys. Quick round of introductions. Let me start with the senior here, Amur Lakshminarayan.
Make me feel so old.
We all are in the same bucket. Okay, better? Thank you. All right, so Amur is not CEO designate, but CEO of Tata Communications Limited. He spent, prior to that, 20 years at TCS, and I'm sure he'll tell you a few more things. On the topic of Industry 4.0, if we do get to it, he's the one who provides the pipes. We have Anant here. Anant has been introduced already once, yesterday or twice maybe. He's the CEO of Microsoft in India, and prior to that at Honeywell, and also a colleague ex-colleague at McKinsey. Anant was at BITS from
91
to 96, so there you are. Revati, you've been introduced to already, so I'll leave her out for a moment. And then Sanjay Jalona here, who's 1986, a software provider. By the way, I should come back and say that Anant provides the cloud for Industry 4.0 and the products. Revati uses them, I suppose, and implements Industry 4.0. And Sanjay, or Jalona, as he's well known, has been a software engineer and a software leader, leading L&T Infotech today, but also spent time at Wipro and Infosys. It's a little bit of trepidation here for me to be here with him on stage. This is the second time in maybe 32 years. The last time we did get booed off, both of us together. We were Darbans in an HTC play.
Maybe you can repeat.
And these were the guys there sitting in the middle who booed us off. So it's the same crowd.
The play was called Ashar Ka Ek Din.
All right. Okay, I'm going to start, maybe Anant, as I promised, with you. So tell us a little bit about, by the way, guys, up here, the students. How many students do we have? Can we just have a show of hands? Many. So many of you aspire to be here on this panel 20 years later or 25 years later. So I thought we'd just start a little bit with their journeys and what has worked and not worked in their careers. Go for it, Anant.
So Rajat, I think just a perspective check, not a time check, but a perspective check. I think this group wants to be here in less than 10 years, not 20. They don't have the patience to wait for that long. Am I correct on that one? So I think to the journey bit that you said, Rajat, I don't want to go deep into all the turns that I had in my journey, but if I just relate it back to BITS and the journey around that point in time, I think I had dreams in my eyes when I got to BITS, and I was a B3, A3, really passionate about economics, really passionate about Triple E. The 4 years there made me figure out those are the two things I didn't want to do. And then I took the solace of going to do an MBA because I thought that was a safe bet. And there again, I figured out I don't want to do marketing, so I had ruled out a bunch of stuff. And I think the journey, if I just summarize up till now at Microsoft, the only lesson that's stayed all through, and that I would just pass on to everybody who's here, aspiring to be here in less than 10 years, is the trick is in the doing, as my former CEO used to call it. Because there are enough smart people on the planet. Everybody here belongs to that group, but there are very few who can get stuff done. So people who can get stuff done are the ones who get here, and I think that's the esteemed folks that I'm sitting here with.
You need to get a bit more personal there. So let's hear some stories and some failures and so on.
There are enough and more. I think don't want to hog time on that, but the one that I go back to a lot is the first time I ran a business in Honeywell. Till then I'd done consulting, I'd done strategy, I thought I had all the answers. Set up a business which was a distribution business, opened up outlets and set it up. I thought I had the strategy totally figured out. After we opened the stores, nobody showed up.
That's a bit like this room.
Yeah, I think it was learning quite a bit at that point in time, the best laid plans. If you don't have feet on street in truly getting it done, that's when it changes. And that's why I said I led with that learning. It's stayed with me since for the last 15 years in truly looking for how do we get stuff done, and strategy will happen along the way.
Thank you. You want to go next?
About what? About.
Same question.
Look, I came to Pilani in '86. I came from a small place. I studied in UP board. I had never read an English book. I had never seen an English movie.
Really?
Seriously.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. And I obviously couldn't attend any of the classes because most of the classes didn't understand anything. But anyway, somehow I managed to get out. But one thing, if I can just relate to, the last 30 years, one thing that's happened is the pace of change today. It's never been faster as we see today. And for unfortunate thing is, it'll never be as slow as it is today in the future. So one thing that I keep telling, and that's what has worked for me, is about lifelong learning, right? Today, it was very easy when we were growing up, and it's going to be tougher for you, but you can achieve in 10 years what we achieved in 30 years, is to continuously learn, because otherwise there is no tomorrow. So that's one thing which I'll leave behind.
So this guy was my backy in the first year and then my wingy in
I hated it.
Yeah, that's true. And he used to be sleeping all day. And we had to wake him up to send him to classes. We need to understand from there to where you've gotten to, what has it taken?
I think lots of luck, also a lot of friends who did many things to make it work, guide, mentor, but be there. But you will make a lot of mistakes. The biggest thing, as his wife actually points out, this family, Janona family, will fall many times, but they will get up stronger than ever. So you will fail many times. And this beginner's mind is the core thing, right? You fall, you learn, you get up again and do it even stronger.
Tell us about the failure.
Oh, I think I was probably...
Be specific. Give us the story.
Be specific. Yeah, I'll be specific. I lost a job in '96. Unheard of in India, right? I was probably one of the... And it was a big taboo. It's very common. It happens all the time in the US. Losing a job, but then getting back, and it's not easy in the society, right? But getting back, learning again, relearning again, being in front of the customers, being in, building teams again is what gets you here.
Thank you. Lakshmi.
I'm not sure how much of it would be of interest to students going way back to 78. I'm a 78 batch. I think there are only a few major decisions I have taken. Everything else has happened by chance, and I picked up the things that came my way. I think one was to get into mechanical engineering. I think there was a few about this morning on mechanical engineering. And that is not, my neighbor used to run a bus company. And I used to see the engines dismantled, and I used to see the mechanics putting them all together. So I said, okay, I'll study mechanical engineering. Got into that. But my practice school sessions taught me that this is not where I want to be. And when I got an offer from TCS, I just took it up. And since then, it's been pretty exciting. I've never planned my career. I just took everything that came my way. I think one of my mentors and learnings as well has been on execution. So just put your head down and do. Since then, I've had many good projects done, not so good ones. Had a break in heading up TCS in the UK when we were just about 50 million pounds. In about 8 to 10 years, we got it to about £1 billion in the UK. Then at that time, the then CEO called up and said, would you like to go to Japan? We are forming a joint venture. I said, yes, sure. I've never been there. And so I just went there, spent 5 years. And after that, I got another call saying, would you like to come to Tata.com? I said, yes. And I just spent 3 months. So it's been if I look back, I've never planned my career, just took anything that came along. And I think the mantra that I used is execution. Just do whatever you take it up extremely well. The rest is, as Sanjay said, lots of luck.
Thank you. Revati, you've spoken about where you are, but let's hear a bit about the journey.
Maybe I'll just, cater it to the girls here and the women here, particularly the girls who are graduating here from BITS with a technical education, and start with that to say that, I think it's still hard to be a woman in a workplace, particularly in the technical field, even though tremendous progress has been made over the years. And so the most important thing I would say to all of you is don't give up very easily, because you'll find enough places and enough opportunities where things may not work perfectly for you as it does for the person sitting next to you. And it's really important to be a little thick-skinned about it and make sure that you're clear that those setbacks don't make you give up very easily. And so I think that's probably the biggest and most important takeaway from my journey, which I talk about on and off in many forums, is the fact that in many fields today, whether it's about financial sector or manufacturing sector or tech, there's not many women, particularly as you progress through your career and go into leadership roles. So finding the right support system around you as you have those setbacks and those failures, and making sure there's enough people to help you and keep you moving is really important. So I want to make sure that all the women and all the girls here walk away with the perspective that there will be setbacks. The world hasn't changed fast enough for us to progress as quickly as we would like. And it's important for you to have your personality, to have the perspective of, I'm going to keep plowing on, I'm going to be thick-skinned about certain issues I face, but I'm going to take those challenges and still make it work. And I think that's really, really important. And that's the only way we're going to see 30, 40, 50% of women in leadership roles, which we're a long ways away from going. So I'd say that's probably important. In terms of failures, there have been many. I've talked about, my education in Pilani and how, I didn't spend any time studying, and then getting up from that itself and finding the right balance of the kind of next job, things that I was passionate about was a big story onto itself. And, I've taken enough assignments where I have gone into it without knowing how to do it and failed in it. I always talk about my first P&L assignment where I didn't have a finance degree, and I really didn't know, what a P&L or a balance sheet looked like. I literally bought one of those corporate finance books and read it to really learn what it meant to, and what it meant to run a P&L. I totally failed in my first few months. The business I was running went south and lost more money than what I started with. And I was fortunate that I had enough people around me who still supported the journey and had the confidence that I could make a change and make it work. And then, not giving up in those times is also important. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is, even today, there's enough instances where you stop and you think and you say, okay, this is not as easy as it looks, and why do you keep going on? And you keep going on because you find enough opportunities to make a change, and it seems like it's worth it. So that would be my only thing.
Sorry, I'm going to pick on this one. Revati, thank you so much for raising this topic. I actually felt that was missing in the agenda when I first saw it. There wasn't a panel thinking about diversity in tech and diversity in general. And I just, again, will pick on this because personally I'm passionate about it, learned it very differently when 10 years back as a leader I was said, listen, you should have a diverse leadership team. I got my leadership team around me and said, we need to do something about it. And I just realized that I had just a set of men sitting there in the leadership team, so I said something had to change. I will say today, just for the girls again in the audience who are aspiring to be, Revati is a great model there. There are so many more now to learn from. I feel proud today that we have roughly about 50%. You said 30-40% in my leadership team, and the best part about that is the 2 tech roles on that leadership team. The only 2 tech roles are both women, because they bring such a perspective. The perspective that they bring is just tremendous with the completeness, and today's tech needs it. It's really, really required in today's tech to have that diversity of perspective. So thank you for raising this.
Okay, I'm going to break the rules again and see if there are any questions on this part from this panel here. Go for it. Wow.
We need a microphone.
We need a microphone.
Why
Yeah,
don't
you
you
can have mine.
You're quite a rule breaker, Rajat Gupta.
I'm always a rule breaker.
Yeah, I'm learning.
Just
new
till
things.
now, so I'm Abhas, I'm 2007 batch Bitzian, right?
Just keep it closer.
Yeah, so I'm 2007 batch Bitzian, I'm Abhas. Actually, just 2 questions right now. So, Anand, I think you really mentioned a very valid point. The doers are the people who will make it big and maybe, cross up across this and sit on this table maybe, right? So, just from the panel, I would want to understand what it takes to be a doer and what is a suggestion for the young audience out there. And second, which I think is a personal question to every one of you, if you make a 100% stack, what will you rate the most? Luck, passion, and hard work?
Wow, that's a good question.
Thank you.
That's a very good question. What does it take to be a doer? You want to take?
I haven't really thought about it. It's just
I thought
No.
you said it was 80% luck.
So let me take the question around doer. I think, I'll be very honest, I had the opportunity to work with Rajat at McKinsey, amongst the best places where you can truly think through how to think and get that structuring of your thought process, which is very important. But I still remember when I got to my first operating role, I realized the importance that I gave to it was a little outweighed compared to what it took to get stuff done. And still remember a very simple lesson that I got pretty early on from another operating leader. And he basically said, you will have some really, really smart people around you. You've got to figure out that when you do something at scale, when thousands of people or hundreds of people are working with you to do it, not everybody will be at the same level of smartness. And how do you make it really meaningful for every one of those people as you think about the doing? How can they relate to it is very important. And the last example that he gave me, he said, when you're fighting a battle, and when you're the captain of the army and there are 10 soldiers sitting with you in a bunker and bullets are flying up and down, the bullet doesn't choose the smartest person or not the smartest person. The bullet chooses anybody, and the impact is the same. So how do you just make sure that you understand how the soldiers are fighting and help them fight better? You'll be a leader who understands what it takes to do.
So Lakshmi, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you created a unicorn effectively in TCS UK, right? That's what you said. So execution must have been a big part of that.
I think the execution, going back, I just remember a story that Mr. Palkiwala, he was then the chairman of TCS, and I was a trainee when I joined. He addressed a bunch of students, and I still repeat this to the day for every trainees who joined the company. So he said, remember what you do is very important. The story of, I think all of you would have heard, a guy who lays the brick, and the difference between a guy who lays the brick for a temple, who says, I'm building a temple, versus a guy who says, look, I'm just laying a brick and putting a cement on, and that's my job, and somebody else. So he says, the guy who thinks he's building a temple, even though he's just laying a brick, his quality of work would be much better. So there are a few things in my life when I look back, understanding the big picture and showing the curiosity to learn everything around that and not just a narrow focus has helped. The second, again, my own experience to be a good doer, the question about whether it's a passion or this, unless you're passionate, you're not going to put your heart in. So it's not this or the other. So if you have to do, putting 100% without passion doesn't help, and you have to. And again, in my career, I've been lucky. I think we have been in the tech world, we were just 1 year in one project, and next year, I grew up with Burroughs for the first year, which is Unisys, and the next year they said you're switching to IBM, and all I had was the full 2 weeks to learn about that. Then you're on the job, right? So you have to learn, I think keeping yourself in the mindset of continuous learning, showing the passion, understanding the big picture, that helps you to execute well and become a doer.
Janana, anything?
Yeah, something that my first boss told me, and that is actually a big difference that I see, especially in India, between a manager and a leader, to your point, is that we fail to build good teams. So this manager, in my first job, my manager actually told me that any point in your life, Sanjay, you got to have at least 3, if not 4 people who can replace you. The funny thing is, you don't feel threatened. They will actually push you upwards so that you can do a bigger role. That has worked very well. And what I see is, this is one place where most of the people actually fail.
Okay, maybe, are there any other questions?
What about his luck, passion, and hard work?
The percentage numbers, I keep all analysis off the table. So, all right, go for it, since you're keen to answer.
Hard work. For me, hard work.
100% hard work.
Oh, it's always a combination of whole lot of
No, he
things.
said divide 100 between these 3.
I have to divide 100.
So this is an analytical question. Can you please open your Excel sheet and do the average also while you're at it?
I'll give a large percentage to hard work.
Hey, not enough. Come on, now you're on the spot.
So hard work, okay. You cannot work hard till you have passion. What was the third thing? I have to tie that up also now. Luck. I think 70% has to be a combination of hard work and passion. And maybe 20 to 30% is luck.
Okay, you make your own luck. Revati.
I'd agree with that. I'd say 40%, hard work, 40% passion, and 20% luck.
I was about to say that, second that.
Done.
I'd agree with that.
Oh, you don't need an Excel sheet.
Myself, Ajay Kumar Goel.
Yes, sir.
I did engineering 72 to 77 bits, and then management 78 to
Can you
80.
put your mic closer to the...
78 to 80 management.
Okay, sir.
Now, you see, over the years, my equation to this question would be efforts multiplied, success is nothing, but efforts multiplied by luck, luck within bracket, destiny. Luck is nothing but destiny. And all the 3 variables are interrelated as well as they are relative, just like the sun, moon, and the earth. So you cannot fix that this is 40% or 50%. It's very simple math.
You got it? You got it?
And from a,
have
and from a
another
person who's
conversation on
management
that
professional too. There you are.
Sir, would you like to trade places?
No, sir.
All right.
It's my
Any
honor.
other? There's
It's
one.
my- it's
Sorry,
my-
one.
Sir, wait a minute, please. Pardon me too.
Oh, no, please.
It's my pleasure and honor to be amongst you. And as a matter of fact, they are relative with respect to themselves also.
Yes.
And they are not absolute. That is also, please mind you. You are a young person.
Yeah.
And
No,
one more thing. You can relate.
so last thing, very quick.
Yeah. One can relate this as with another equation where E is equal to MC square. Each one of us know this. E is nothing but the success. S is equal to E. And M is the critical mass. If we can gather this critical mass, in whichever way, we will succeed. We will
Okay.
I didn't do very well in studies. I'm still struggling with it.
All right, there's a question there. Can you get the microphone there? Okay, what's the question?
So,
Please,
so
sir.
my question is going to be slightly different. Given this very distinguished panel, my question is to all of you, in terms of, as things are changing with AI workload.
Sorry, keep the mic close.
AI, all the advancements in AI. My question is to all of you in terms of, Revati, if you could touch upon how the hardware aspect is changing and how it impacts your business. Anand, you are basically the user of that hardware. That's where you're supplying services.
Sorry, I can't hear clearly. Can you just keep the mic straight?
Yeah. So, I mentioned that with all the advancements in AI, if you could give a perspective, and I was looking at everyone, different folks on the panel there. Revti is into, from my perspective, mostly hardware. What are the things that the younger student should focus on in terms of learning? You, Anant, can likely shed a light on, from a software perspective, cloud deployment on, because you're user of the hardware. And both Lakshmi Narayan and Sanjay Jalona can probably provide some perspective on connectivity, other aspects, how it changes your
no,
businesses.
that's good.
Sorry,
I'm just going to put that. I'm not going to put that question on hold for the second part of the discussion. So just hold your horses. We'll come back to that question. Any last question on the first, on the journey that these?
Let's ask the kids.
Somebody there? Yeah, I want a student to ask. Yeah, there you are. Go for it.
Okay, no technology question, okay?
Sure, sir. Hello, everyone. I'm a second-year student here. My question might seem a bit childish among the discussions going on here, but I just wanted to ask each and everyone on the panel that did you plan or strategize something during your college years in bits like what you were going to do in future?
So, these guys, they wrote a formula
It's a good
very
question.
carefully in the second year. They're going to give it to you afterwards. Just come and talk to them afterwards. They're going to give it to you, and that's their formula. That's the reason they're here today. Okay, guys, did you strategize?
I had no bloody clue. I was not even sure I'll get a job. But, this is where destiny plays a lot to it. Things happen in your life.
Okay.
Sir, unfortunately, that also didn't work.
Okay.
But I think it's a really good question, and it's not childish, and I'm glad you asked it, because I think it takes courage to ask a question like this when you're in the middle of going through college. I would say that, many people today are very planful about where they want to go with their lives. And you have the opportunity, because the data and information and facts you have available is so much that you can be planful. But I'd say do one thing in college, and first is be passionate about what you're doing, have a lot of fun with what you're doing, make sure you make the best relationships that you can, learn about the psychology of people and your friends, and you can get a lot from that, just from other than attending your college and classes and all of that. So I definitely, like Sanjay, had no clue what I was doing in Pilani, but I learned one thing, which I think went a long ways for me. I learned how to make friends, I learned how to network, and I learned how to, deal with all different types of people. And I think that is the most important leadership lesson you can ever get.
So, will not repeat or endorse what was said earlier, exactly the same situation in terms of where I was, at least on campus. I'll take one example maybe from my first job after my business school, which will answer your question even better. I was part of McKinsey, and it was very exciting in McKinsey at that point in time to go do projects in the financial sector, because it was a lot of glamour, it was a lot of good stuff, you got visibility, there were short projects and you did a lot of them. I unfortunately, at that point in time, I used to feel that they don't love me at all, and they put me onto projects in industrial and in tech at that time. And tech I enjoyed a little bit, industrial initially I wasn't very sure. If you just look at my career afterwards, I ended up leading Honeywell, purely industrial, and now I'm leading Microsoft. So I'm so glad my strategy did not work at that point in time.
Amur.
Yeah. Maybe 80% execution as well as... yeah, I think I answered that in my very first part. I never planned my career. I just took assignments that came my way, and think as Anand said, some of the assignments you felt, you're going to maintain a system. And in technology, people say, oh, doing new development projects were more sexier than going into maintenance. But as long as you put your mind, learn every day, you get there. So I think the only thing I would still say is enjoy what you do, stay at it, and things will happen.
There was another kid there who had a question. Does he have time?
Brief question, brief answers.
Yeah, the
Go
guy
for
in
it.
the black sweatshirt, yeah.
It's magic.
Yes. So as all of you have been discussing about people, and I'm sure all of you would be leading a lot of people, teams. So if you were to form a team and if you were to select one person in your team, what is the most attractive quality or the most formidable feature that you look out for a person when you take them into your team?
Great question.
Fantastic question.
One word answers.
One word answer. I always look for what can I learn from that person.
I would like to see if the person has a can-do attitude.
I look for how many steps ahead they are in terms of their thinking, and if I see that, then I love the person I'm talking to. So
No finger is the same.
No what?
No finger is the same. You got 5 different sizes and shapes.
He's saying everybody counts. But, I think you have to be God if you add all of that up. So I think the other thing that may be important here is to just recognize that some things you may not be good at. There's some things you're good at and really focus on those. Anyway, sorry, I wasn't supposed to give advice. Okay, we'll move on.
So says Rajat, the consultant.
Rajat, there's a lady there. Can she ask a question? Though?
Okay.
Sorry.
Upasana?
No.
Go for it.
No,
There's a lady there, yes.
Oh, please.
The micro, yeah, go ahead.
There's a mic right next to you.
Yeah, I'm 74 entrant. I don't need a mic actually, and I'm an academic, so I'm used to raising my voice a lot to talk to students. Revati, I have a burning question. What is it that makes a Revati? What did you have to do? What did you have to do to be a female and get into the position that you are?
Yes, Revati.
For me, I haven't said no to any assignment, doesn't matter what it took. And some would say that was foolish, some would say, that took a toll on all of us personally. But I think that was a huge part of how I somehow ended up where I am. And doesn't matter if I was 3 months pregnant with my first son and somebody said, pick up and move to England, we did. And when we thought life was settled, somebody said, hey, can you go to China? And we did. And when we thought everything was going great there, somebody said, no, now move back and go to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We did. So a lot of it has been just jumping in and doing whatever was asked to be done, and doing it with a lot of passion. And then eventually all that added up, to where I am today. But I'd say that would be the single most important thing, would say, just jumped in and did it. No. I mean, of course, it would be flippant on my part to not say that it is, you encounter all kinds of issues being a woman in this space. And then, most of the times you're the only person, at a dinner table, you're the only person at the end of the night who's a woman at a meeting. And you could be in Japan where norms are different, and or anywhere else in the world. So yes, you always encounter things like that, and all the women here have encountered and will continue to face those issues. I think it's really important to figure out what's your personal mechanism to deal with it. And that's why I said about having a good balance of knowing how to address it, but also being somewhat thick-skinned about the smaller issues, and having a fine balance of that is important. And even today it happens, right? There isn't a CEO panel I don't go to where I'm asked to serve the coffee. And so I think it's a fact of the matter that is the case, and you have to have a sense of balance and fun and all of that about it. So I would just ask all the women to be thoughtful about it and not take it lightly. And I'll ask all the men to not deal with it in a very flippant way and make sure that you address it in a way that's meaningful.
And I'm sorry.
You're going to pay for it, Rajat Gupta. Trust me.
Yes,
You were saying
You'll be
something.
buying me my whiskey tonight.
So I was just going to add on behalf of Revati, but also all of us, I think one thing we always underestimate is the support and the sacrifices that the family make for us to be here, right, and talking to you. Family and also friends. So that should never go unaddressed.
Okay. Can I move on, Revati? Can I move on, or do you have
He
more
just
questions?
got a lot of brownie points.
I know.
Okay.
Please record and send it to me, please.
All right, so let's move to the second part. We have about 10 minutes. So the second part was the technical part of the discussion. Actually, it was the main part. This is about digital, and particularly the topic was Industry 4.0. So, just by way of my explanation of it, it's basically Industry 1.0 was steam, where you had to have the energy produced where it was used. Then you had electricity, where it could be produced in a different place. You had, and there was a difference of 100 years between them, between 1800 and 1900, between those two industrial revolutions. The next one was in the 70s, 80s, and 90s with automation, computerization, etc. And then there's something different that's happening 20, 30 years after that today. That's the digital revolution or the Industry 4.0. But let's hear from our panelists on what their view of what's going on here. Is this a mega force? Is this a fad?
I think it's definitely a mega force. So the way to think about digital, one is there is a lot of confluence of many different technologies coming together and all maturing almost at the same time. So we've had AI and ML. They're not new per se, but the computing power, the data, the storage, the accessibility to all of that is making them all more powerful. So I would say confluence of different technologies coming together is changing definitely things. In my business, the thing that is exercising my mind most is we think about digital as data, applications, and connectivity. And I came from an applications and data background in my previous job. I think the data guys and application guys are represented here who are all making money. It's the connectivity guys who've been commoditized. So the thing that has been exercising my mind is how connectivity can take a rightful place. So if you think about digital, it's the data, the enormous amount of data that is available, all the AI, machine learning driven applications that are bringing the intelligence to serve the customers. And I think that without connectivity, that's a lifeblood, and that is the one that connects things to applications or people to applications. All of these coming together is what digital is. And that's on the technology side. But I think also it's much more than just the technology, and we can talk about it subsequently.
Okay, guys, how is it changing the world? If it's a mega force, first, I presume you agree it's a mega force, right? So if it's a mega force, what are examples, stories that in your own business lives around this?
So let me give you an example which is real life to everyone here. I was meeting Dr. Devi Shetty last week in Bangalore. He doesn't need introduction to this audience. He's an awarded leader by the government of India, and also is responsible for a hospital chain that does 17% of heart surgeries in India. And I think of him as the best technologist. He actually uses AI, analytics, is fantastic at using communication on the smartphone because he literally says that medical science is changing as we speak. In 10 years, it'll look completely different. And what will happen inside a hospital will completely change. And we are learning with him because he's the person who actually knows this. So everything that you said about hardware, software, analytics actually comes together on an operating table. And also at the time when a patient has a heart event, and you need response in 5 minutes, or even faster than that, 5 seconds. At times you need response, and how can you get to that patient? So there are enough and more stories that he's told us, but I can take just that one example. It's fundamentally changing life and how you save lives.
I'd say, again, I'll give an example. I think it's the best way to envision any concept and any story is, if you think about manufacturing of the future and how Industry 4.0 could revolutionize the world is, for us, every time you're starting up a facility or making a new product or moving something from A to B, there's a lot of work that happens in terms of getting ready for it and standardizing processes and things like that. But in the future, there is a world, there is an environment where you could have a facility that's sitting in Vietnam, or have a facility that's sitting in China, and have a facility that's sitting in India with the same set of equipment, with the same set of analytics associated with all of them, and making the same decisions on the quality and productivity of the equipment that's all connected, and making virtual decision making. To me, that would be what Industry 4.0 does. Because today there's a lot of human intervention that happens in making those decisions. But in the future, you could envision there is seamless productivity globally, doesn't matter where you are. And it takes out the equation of people making decisions. And how that changes the world is, think about how many manufacturing decisions are being made today based on cost, based on labor cost, productivity, and efficiency. And in the future, you could see all that changing significantly. And then that changes where manufacturing and supply chain sits in the future of the world. So to me, that is how you should really think about Industry 4.0. And then a decade down the road, where you put a facility is going to be a whole different conversation.
No, I'm going to ask you an addition, or maybe...
Can I address the question that he
you do
had?
that, but one other additional thing. Is this only about technology in your view, or is it more? So
It's actually not about technology at all. And I think Lakshmi mentioned this. It's not only a set of technologies. Some people call it digital. I call them exponential technologies. It's actually about the ways of working. How do you use technologies at the convergence of physical and digital? The world will not move completely digital. It'll be physical as well as digital, and how these two are talking to one another. But I want to address your question, sir. What kind of skills do people need for the future? The way we hire today, and it's getting very, very difficult to do that. Last year, I went to my HR and said, we want to hire the most curious people. Because the pace of change is so fast, you need people who are very curious to learn new things. People who have high level of imagination. And having the highest CGPA does not necessarily mean you are the most imaginative person, right?
Really?
So that is one thing which I would leave behind in terms of, so it's a mixture of STEM plus liberal arts. And that's what educators need to change. Storytelling becomes more important than anything else.
Okay, so let's see if we have time to come back to that question. I do want to stick on the skills point, right? So I have two thoughts, two questions. Sorry, Anant. You
No,
can
I
add
was
your rest.
answering that question only.
I have, we have maybe three kinds of audiences here, right? So there is a set of students who are sort of starting their life's journey. There is perhaps a set of mid-career executives, and then there are senior people who are like yourselves. How do people need to reskill themselves? Janona addressed the issue of students, I think, but how do others need to reskill themselves?
So I'll take it with my personal example and actually answer that question. 3.5 years back, I came to Microsoft, and I was supposed to go and talk about digital transformation to every one of my enterprise customers as to how they need to change their businesses with digital transformation. I came from a pedagogy and a learning where I was a voracious note taker, filling reams of notebooks with my notes. And I had this epiphany in a meeting where this person was talking about digital transformation. We were talking about paperless office, how everything should move in terms of information. I was taking notes and writing it. And I said, what am I doing here? Myself, what is my skill set of 4 decades? How am I operating while trying to position what that business should do? Literally, the next day, I stopped using pen and paper, personally. It was very difficult to get off pen and paper and use only digital signal to even record. I still am a voracious note taker, but the collaboration with my colleagues, with the way I work, has changed dramatically. There is AI being applied to a lot of the work that I do, who I collaborate with, who I send messages to, and so on. So my personal way of working has completely changed in the last 3 years. And I think unless we bring that digital transformation to ourselves, turn the camera not to the world but to ourselves and say, what am I changing today? Which habit am I leaving today and picking up a new skill, to the point that Sanjay said, what am I curious about? Then it's not going to become real. We will become artifacts of the past if we don't work it on ourselves.
All right, quick closing comments from the two of you, Revati and Lakshmi.
I think just I would say 2 things. One is the continuous learning, because learning never stops and it never. The other big, personally, I found was, we introduced this whole agile concepts of working, and we strongly believe digital without agile is meaningless, right? And agile is about all mindset. And that is the biggest, for people who have been used to sequentially doing things in a waterfall model, and suddenly say, now start doing agile, is a big mind shift change. And I would think those who are prepared to make those big mind shift change and learn would be the people who would be successful. Not individually, but I'm talking about businesses as a whole as well.
And I'd say my simple one, and maybe addressing it more to the students here, I always try to think about making the complex simple, would be to say, I wouldn't get overwhelmed or daunted by this issue of what digital transformation is and what it means to you and how you position yourself as you look at where you want to go in life. It frankly isn't that difficult, and you know as much as the person sitting next to you, because it's a topic that's changing all the time. So there's no excuse not to read up, not to understand, not to ask questions, and be enough informed that you can land yourself in a position where you can be part of the change that is happening. So I just want to leave all of you away with the idea that it's not as complicated as you think it is. It is a journey that is starting, and you can be part of that journey. There's no excuse not to be part of the journey. And so just listen, learn, look around enough, and you'll be able to drive the same transformation yourself and to any organizations that you can be part of.
Any closing thoughts from you, Jalona?
Have fun while doing it.
Have fun while doing it. All right. So it's my pleasure to thank this esteemed panel here. Thank you, friends. I think you've left behind many thoughts, not only for the students here, but also for many of us. Your journeys have been inspiring, and hopefully many of these people here will complete or get to that point in 10 years, the aspiration that you said, Anant. And I'm sorry we weren't able to spend enough time on the technical topic, but do catch them. They are the experts. And I'm sorry again, Revati.
No, Rajat, that's fine. I totally understand, sir. You're buying my drink tonight, remember that.
And I'm glad you didn't stick to the Industry 4.0 topic. Thank you so much for sharing all your experience, your thought process, your values, and moreover, what makes you you.